So what I'm going to share with you guys today is a live talk that was recorded. It was originally given on September 16th, and I hope you guys get a lot out of it. It is a group talk that I gave on just integration of trauma and how the trauma affects our nervous system and different ways that we can kind of just look at it from a different perspective. Because quite often it's just like when we're looking at our traumas through the lens of us reliving the traumas, it's very, very scary. But what we can do is just kind of take a completely different approach and just look at it from a distance. So, without further ado, here's the talk. So what we're going to learn is that, each of us, we carry these stories, right? And we carry them kind of inside of our bodies. And these stories, they're linked to all sorts of things. They're linked to relationships that we have. They're linked to disappointments. They're linked to fears. They're linked to hope, right? And you can look at them as traumas, but it's not just what happened to us, what traumas are. It's not what happened to us. It's what lives inside us afterwards. That's what the trauma is. And what I want to kind of talk about is the way to process and understand trauma. And it starts by separating from it and then taking the lessons and learning them from them and then integrating those lessons. Because eventually what we're looking to do is rise to our higher selves, right? And once we rise to our higher selves, then these little childish little tools and manipulations and all of those things, they become less effective on us. And that's what it means to kind of to heal from those traumas. But before we kind of go into it, I just want to kind of give a brief explanation onto understanding trauma. And part of it is that trauma, if you look at where it lives in the nervous system. And we know that we're having a traumatic response when it shows up in any of these four ways. It's a fight response, flight response, a freeze response, or a fawn response, right? And none of these responses are a weakness, but they're actually our brains going into survival. And a lot of it has to do with our past, just the way that we kind of had to survive in the past. And what we can kind of notice is where in our nervous system these things can store, which is why it's like, in sessions and stuff, I always ask, where are you feeling that, right? Because our parts, they develop protective roles. And one of the roles that we can notice that a lot of us can carry is that the throat closes. And the reason it closes is it wants to kind of keep us quiet, right? And that's a survival response. And you can think back to the times where just like if I spoke up, things would get worse. So it was actually a really good survival response. And the stomach can carry knots, and they can carry worry. And our heart is interesting because it holds both love and it also holds pain. Right? But the key point of trauma is it convinces us, and the lie that trauma tells us again and again and again, because we hear it so many times from our subconscious, is that our part of us believes that it's true. But the lie that trauma does is it convinces us that we are that wound, right? And once you kind of take a moment and just think about that, we are our wound. Well, okay, let's just observe that, right? We are also the observer that's watching that. And the nervous system, as it's reacting, what we're noticing is that the higher self, the part of us that isn't traumatized, right? That's the part of us that can witness it. And, we can go into the neuroscience of it. It's just like when we're in a traumatic response, we have a tendency to go to the back of our brain, which is a very reactionary part of us. But, a lot of the tools and stuff that we use in order trauma treatment and recovery, it's all to get our neocortex online. And it's a part of our brain that doesn't carry that amount of trauma, and it can actually witness the back. So we use part of the healed part of our mind to look into the other part of it, right? And one of the things of separating, because that's the hardest part, right? It's like when we're enmeshed with our trauma, we become our trauma, and our trauma wants us to think that we're our trauma. But we can also observe our trauma. And that creates that little bit of separation. I just want to introduce a concept to everyone. And that concept is the difference between caring and carrying, right? Caring and carrying. They're two completely different things. They sound very similar, but they're very different, because we can love somebody who without holding their burdens, right? Now, that's the difference between empathy and compassion. Compassion is just like, oh, I see somebody that's hurting, but those aren't my wounds to carry, or they're not mine to fix, right? So it's just like that lesson. When we carry other people's wounds and other people's burdens, it just becomes heavy on our souls. And we can start to teach ourselves that we can love them without holding their burdens. And the other thing is practice. It's going to take a lot of practice, right? Because if you just kind of even just use your imagination, and you're imagining that it's just like you're holding your pain in your hand. And the goal is to just kind of see it for what it is, right? Ask it to leave your body, and if you can just get it to go in front of you, right? There's that whole Gestalt empty chair therapy, right? Always got that empty chair, that you can put it into the empty chair, or if you can just see it in front of you, right? And just see it for what it is, just thank it for how it tried to protect you, and then notice that, I am not my burden. I have this burden, but I'm not my burden. I have trauma, but I'm not my trauma. Trauma is part of me, but I'm not the whole. It's not the whole me. It's a piece of me. And if it's a piece of you, it means most of you is actually okay, right? But if you just use your visualization, you just kind of go into a throat that may hold fear, and you breathe into your throat and just kind of send the message into your throat that I am not my fear, right? And you can notice just by acknowledging it, how just putting attention and focus into a place that used to try to keep you safe is now kind of softening. And the other thing you do is you can breathe into your stomach. A lot of us, we hold tension in our stomach, right? We can just kind of breathe into your stomach. Ask your stomach to soften. Just kind of notice it, right? Just send the message to your subconscious, into your stomach, that I am not my tension. And you can notice the shift that kind of happens. And part of it is through witnessing it. And part of it is you becoming your own guide, your own healer. And you can breathe into your chest. You can say, my heart may ache, right? But I'm not my ache. It's a part of me, but it's not the whole me. And you can notice how that it starts to shift. That we're just creating larger holding environments to hold whatever is there. One of the things of just kind of labeling, it's like, where is it? Tensions in my head, or my throat, or my arm, or my stomach, or my feet. There's also a part of you that is grounded right now, right? And there's a part of you that isn't hurting. And it could be your toes, it could be your hands. And you can see if you can kind of notice more and more of your body with more gentleness, more awareness. And you start to soften your nervous system. You start to turn on the parasympathetic nervous system. Yoga Nidra is a very good technique for using just body awareness, getting us out of our minds and kind of into our bodies, because our bodies are the holding environment. Right? And this is what we're trying to do, is we're just trying to create this cognitive reframe. And part of it is just like, if we believe that we're our traumas, or the things that happen to us, and we want to release them, what's the first thing that kind of happens to those parts? It's just like, oh my God, you're rejecting me, right? But it actually means freedom, right? It's a freedom to love without drowning. When those beliefs come, and they're very intense, it's just like, oh, okay, I can see you, but on the other side of you is my freedom. So what we learn is that, trauma brings with it a bunch of different lessons. And all our traumas, there's lessons in them. And part of the integration process and healing is just learning those lessons, witnessing them first, hearing them. And then, we can see that trauma brings with it things like grief, right? And you can look at the grief, like lost dreams. I wish I had a parent in my life that kind of cared for me, or I wish my spouse, we had, created that dream life together. But there's also grief of broken expectations, right? And there's also the grief of missed moments. Maybe I stayed too long. Maybe I should have set a boundary sooner. Maybe. All of those things are just additional burdens that we end up carrying. When we just kind of start to notice them, we can kind of soften them. And then what we're doing now is just acknowledging that the grief. We're acknowledging it. Say, hey, how you doing? I see you. You're there, right? But I want you to kind of look at grief as, more like fertilizer, right? It's crap. But how do you take the crap in your life and turn it into something else? Well, what you do is you turn it into soil, right? And then, the emptiness, don't think of it as, as we're releasing these things, it's just like what's going to be there. It's going to be empty. No, it's not. You actually turn it into soil. And then you can ask, what seed do I want to plant in that soil? Right? And if it's rejection that you're dealing with, then maybe you want to plant the seed of of safe connection with people. If it's joy, then maybe you want to plant the seed of just self-expression of some kind, if you've been shut down or anything like that. But you can actually take what it is that people try to make you small. It's like, all right, well, I'm going to plant the seed that I'm going to be able to speak. Right? And it's just like, what is this new dream that you want to plant in this soil? If we process these things, what's that new dream that you thought was gone? Right? And the lesson becomes that integration means transforming the raw material of the pain that we had. What do? We kind of turn it into wisdom, right? And other tools that we use, right? We use compassion. We also use direction. Yeah, these things happen to me. They are in the past. What can I learn? What can I integrate? And what can I move into my future? And the other kind of thing that we're kind of noticing, even if we kind of go into that observer role, you can call it the observing ego, you can call it the higher self, in Buddhism, it's like Buddha nature. In Christianity, it's like the God seed that's in us all. It doesn't really matter what you say. I'm just going to use the higher self. When you're in the higher self, it isn't about perfection. What the higher self actually is a form of alignment. Right? It's a part of you that can hold love and let go of the hurt. Right? And when we can be in alignment, you can imagine we have three brains, like the head brain, the heart brain, and the gut brain. The head brain is going to be more reactionary. It's going to be very childlike at times, right? And the heart brain, the heart can lie, so we do have to be a little careful with it, but it has very powerful emotions. Right? And then our gut brain is kind of the steady one, right? And Joseph Campbell, he said, follow your bliss, right? Because it's just like, what is your bliss, right? So it is kind of finding that higher self, and then anchoring. Anchoring is a really important tool as well, because what you're saying is like, I can care without carrying, right? Because the burdens that we carry, the traumas that we carry, we do have to carry them. But what if we cared for what we're carrying? And then what if we can put those things down for a little while? Even for little short moments at first, and then longer and longer moments over time. Because what you're actually starting to learn is that, I can love without losing myself, right? I can grieve without becoming my grief, right? The emotions are going to come. The anger is going to come. These things are going to come. But if we can just kind of observe ourselves as these emotions kind of start to go through us, what we realize is what happens afterwards is that release of intense emotions and traumas and stuff like that. It means a rising, because you're choosing to embody the witness, not the wound, right? If all I looked at was like the scar that I have on my head or the scar that I have on my arm from when I was a kid, then I become that, right? But the whole thing is just like, yeah, no, that's a story of my life, but it's not my entire self. Right? So we end up speaking through the voice of self and not through the voice of fear. And it takes time, and it takes grounding, it takes breath work, it takes all of those things that we repeat. And sometimes mantras help, and sometimes journaling helps. But all of these things, it's just like they're ways of us integrating what's underneath, without getting too involved and too sucked into it. We invite different kind of grounding practices that help, right? You can have your hand on your heart, you can have your hand on your stomach, you can think about your throat, and you can spread your toes wherever you are. Just spread your toes into the ground. And imagine what's underneath you is soil. It's fertile soil that you can plant anything that you want. And it is taking our experiences out of our systems, putting them into that soil and seeing what else that we can grow, right? And grounding always starts with I am safe. Because if you want to break the lie of what our minds or our traumas are trying to do, so they're trying to convince us that they are real, right? They're trying to convince us. And they're very persuasive because they've been doing that for a really long time. So what you can do is you can breathe in that I am safe and breathe out the message that I am free. Breathe in, I am safe. Breathe out, I am free. And what we're actually doing at that point is we're just creating that affirmation that, I am more than what happened to me. I am what I'm choosing to become, right? And it all becomes about, processing, allowing what's here, witnessing, not getting sucked into it, and holding space, and giving ourselves something else, looking towards the future. It's like, how is this going to make me stronger? How is this going to make me better? What is this wisdom that I'm learning? And once I learn, then I can apply to my life in better and better ways. Well, I hope you found that talk really helpful. And if you're looking for additional support, because this trauma recovery thing is it's one of those things where it's just like, yeah, we can learn about it, and we can learn about and understand trauma, but it actually becomes that process of integrating it, noticing what those experiences are and what they actually meant for us. And actually to heal, it does take support. Right. And Narcovery has a bunch of different programs, and we have like immersion program with 3 different levels of support: full immersion, deep immersion, and just supportive immersion. And all of those programs are available online, and you can look for them at narcovery.com, and then yeah, just book an appointment. Tell us what you're kind of going through. The first intake call is free, and if it's right for you, if it is something that you're looking to spend, there's no quick fix for this, by the way. This isn't just like a weekend or any of those things. This is a multi-month, could even be well over a year in doing this work, but it is transformational. So I do hope you check out the website. There should be a link down below, and hopefully we'll connect with each other soon.